I'm Vin.
I'm Sori.
And this is Paramaecium. The name of this song is, let me see. The Unnatural Conception in Two Parts, The Birth and the Massacre of the Innocents. Whew. Oh, this should be wonderful. For timely topical political...
No, this is for Jason.
Shout out to Jason. For timely topical political commentary, you can hit us up at Middle America with Vin and Sori. There are multiple ways to get your song reviewed, dear listener. My favorite one is the community option. $1 to gate gets you in a Patreon where you, dear listener, will meet the amazing Leah of the Village, Pony of the Village, the mighty Ian, the world famous Calendros. And basically, those are called alliances, and the alliances are basically situated around genre. There's a death metal alliance, there's an extreme metal alliance, there's a black metal alliance. You bring all those together, dear listener, and you end up forming those clubs, and then you pull your points together, and then that influences what songs that we do. Now, there are different tiers and different levels. There's also, you know, Sori, 99.99% of the time that you talk to somebody from one of us on Patreon, it's usually Sori. And then there's a $5 tier, for example, that will get you a sneak peek into the song that we're working on, which actually is coming along very swimmingly, actually.
It is.
First 40 seconds.
Look, you're so funny.
We're gonna have a Patreon watch party for the debut of the record. The video, that's going to be $10 and up. You're actually going to get to see the video live before everybody else. And all that jazz. So there's different perks of being on Patreon. Now, if you're a filthy capitalist and you don't want to wait and you don't want to hang out with your folks and all that jazz, and you don't want to have an alliance but you want it for yourself, all you do is hop, skip, and jump straight into the
$125 tier.
Correct. And then you can do what you would like. So there are multiple ways to do the $125. One way to do it is vinandsorimerch@gmail.com. The other is Vincent Devgrew at
PayPal.
Yeah, that's PayPal. That's the PayPal address. There's multiple ways to do that. So $125 gets you straight to the head of the line. You don't have to work with an alliance, and that's what the big homie did. And
After you do that, oh, go ahead. After you do that 3 times, then Vinny has spoken. You get dropped down to the $75 price, so it won't be at $125 for you anymore.
I have.
If your song is over 10 minutes, you have to communicate that to us, and we will look to see if we can fit that into our schedule. So Jason is on some special treatment here. How many times are you going to push my computer around?
I'm trying to find my...
Looks like we're unplugged anyway. So, yeah, Jason communicated that, and that's why we are on for this this very long song. We'll see if it was worth every moment or not.
Right.
Look, this is not plugged in. You must have let the kids come in here again.
I did. I'm stuck in this dungeon working while everybody else gets to hang out with their family.
That did not feel like 17 minutes.
No, it didn't.
That is so weird.
That's got to be a Christian band, these guys, huh?
I mean, I would think so.
What is the name of the band? Paramaecium? Let me see this band here.
It's so weird because I'm like, there was 2 minutes left of the song. I'm like, we're probably like 6 minutes in right now. And then I looked and there was only 2 minutes left of the song. I'm like, we can listen to this for 15 minutes.
It doesn't say explicitly that they're a Christian band. It says Australian.
They focus on Christian lyrical themes and Christian concepts.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so does Behemoth. Good Lord. Man, Australia, man. Australia.
Yeah, but their genre is Christian, but that's what.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe they are. Who knows? Man, Australia puts out a lot of metal, man.
Yeah.
Like, there's some like serious metal bands from Australia. Yeah. It's crazy to me. I remember like when we first got introduced to Nealo Viscaris, I was like, oh my gosh, these guys are playing metal in Australia. Like,
yeah.
And like every band is from Australia now. Good Lord.
Yeah.
We're not from Australia, but we're in a band.
We're from Maine.
We're from France.
Wow.
Okay.
You know what? Okay, obviously this was about Jesus' birth.
Sadat. Well, his conception, his birth, the slaughter of the innocents, and then the flight to Egypt. So, it's interesting, though, because the technical term is, the Immaculate Conception, it's usually.
Yeah, and they said unnatural.
Yeah, and they call it the unnatural, which is very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So, it's really, obviously, we're carrying a child right now, so... Shout out to Izzy. Izzy's like, you've never been pregnant.
What? Oh.
I said we're on our second break.
She meant you personally.
Sadat, yeah, because certain groups have a vested interest in
in silencing your voice.
Sadat. But the 201 flesh, Izzy, so we technically all pregnant. Thank you for your contribution.
He's a big part of this pregnancy.
Sadat. That was a good one. That was a very, very good one. I'm going to be watching that for quite some time. He's a big part of the pregnancy. That's like The Office, huh? All right.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so when this song started, I'm like, Jason, you scared me, to be honest with you.
Did he?
Because in his message, he said, hold on, let me just pull it up.
I was almost certain this was going to be about abortion.
Yeah, me too.
After I read the first line,
He said, I don't expect a long reaction because of what the song is about. So I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be it. And then when the song started and they were on like some dirt hard road, I'm like, that baby's going to die. Oh, that baby's not going to make it. This is going to be about a miscarriage.
Right.
Because at first I thought it was abortion, and then I was like, no, it's a miscarriage. And then it kept going, and I was like, for a second, like, you picked up, obviously, on where it was going. I think I had it so much in my head where I thought it was going, and I was, like, preparing myself for it to be a song about miscarriage, that then I like, wasn't ready for, like, the switch when it said the young couple, City of David, the census.
Well,
and
yeah, that's when I was like, oh, okay, this is different.
And then I'm like, oh, he's safe for 33 years.
Right, so then he could be aborted ex womb on the cross. Good night.
Yeah, please don't sweep the hallway when we're shooting a video.
It really, like, you know, when people think about, and like I said, like, now that we're pregnant, like, obviously it's part of the, but, you know, every week, every Sunday is the week, is an extra week for the baby. That's when we're counting it. So we always put on those little blurbs about the ultrasound video, and like, this is what baby's doing, you know, yada,
baby's
yada,
the
yada.
size of a cauliflower right now.
Seduct. Right. That's really interesting. Nobody, you know, every time we watch those videos, they never say this is what the fetus is doing. But that's another subject.
Right.
But like, they talk about this, you know, so like 7-8 weeks ago, it was like, you know, his nails are forming or whatever, and now it's like he's got favorite
he's blinking
foods. You can hear his heartbeat from, you know, listening. Like,
yeah, you never tried that.
It's just like all these developments.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, and you never think as a Christian about the fact that Jesus did that, like that he went through all those stages of development, and as a human being, he wasn't conscious of himself in the way that a normal baby in utero is not. It's just very fascinating concept.
I agree.
The incarnation, where, because in the Old Testament you had moments where God would show up. They call them theophanies or Christophanies, or but you had God showing up in a corporeal sense, but that was understood as God was manifesting himself in that way so as to communicate with people in a corporeal context, but, or a physical, you know, context. He was you know, 18, is it Genesis 18, Genesis 16, somewhere around there, when the Lord appeared to Abraham beyond among the trees of Mamre or whatever. And, you know, the Lord appeared and all those types of things. But the incarnation is saying that he actually took on, like, there was an hypostasis, that he actually became a human being, you know, where, especially, it's really interesting when you talk about in the intertestamental period, like, it was obvious that there was a multiplicity in the Godhead in the Old Testament. And so you had Old Testament intertestamental authors and philosophers trying to figure out what was going on, because you have, you know, Genesis 18 being the famous one, where it says the Lord rained down fire in Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. So they're like two Yahweh figures, and basically Philo said, yeah, you know, there's a second power, and he's like a divine being, you know. Philo attributed Psalm 8 to this second power, and he said a lot of really crazy. Actually, Philo went as far as to say that the second power was basically the mediator between God and man. That he basically brought God to man, you know, and communicated God in a way that men could understand, and then brought men's cases to God in such a way as to gain God's favor. Which is exactly what Christians say that Jesus did. And, you know, part of it, like, the blasphemy of Christianity in the first century towards Judaism is not so much that we were saying that there was a second power in heaven, because
they already had the concept.
They already had that concept down. The blasphemy was to say that he would actually become a man, not manifest himself in the physical world. The real blasphemy was saying that this second power actually condescended to become a man, to become a baby.
It is pretty shocking.
And, right. That was the blasphemy.
I know for me, when I was listening to this song, I was thinking about, I felt like they communicated, if you were listening to a lot of the different sounds, there was, especially when it was getting time for his birth, there sounded like there was like the messiness of the delivery in the sound.
Right.
And then you heard the crying of the infant. But you know how like the Bible talks about types and shadows, and it will give something like for instance, like a marriage. A marriage is a husband and a wife.
Yeah.
But that relationship is meant to show us another relationship, which is about Jesus, and his bride is the whole church.
Right.
So there's like a small concept that's been done over and over and over, but it represents something bigger as time progresses. You see what that bigger thing is. So I was wondering if with deliveries, because they're so messy and they're painful and they're, all that, like if those have been happening since the beginning of the world, but that it was supposed to be like a type and shadow of the birth of Christ, in that him being completely holy and completely perfect is born into a sinful world, and the messiness of that. Like, can you imagine, like, you don't have, like, it says that he's touched with the feelings of our infirmities. Like, he understands and he feels the things that we feel.
Yeah.
And, like, it doesn't say that about God the Father. So there's something about Jesus being born into this world and living his life in this world that makes him a more understanding high priest for us. So when you think about the birth being the beginning of that, because one thing that we were looking at when on the 28th week, it said that the baby has taste buds more so now than they will have when they're born.
Yeah.
And I thought that was extremely interesting, because it was like, well, what's the point? But the baby is tasting your amniotic fluid, and whatever you eat, the amniotic fluid will taste like, and then they will like it or not like it.
Right.
And so, but we don't get to see those reactions, and what's the point of that unless God is having that time with the baby?
Yeah.
Because
your hands form my unformed substance.
Yeah.
Very interesting line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, the song was so much about like sometimes you can't put into words, but there's like almost like an understanding in your spirit of, wow, like he came down and he was born, and it was even messier than most deliveries because he was in a barn. And
yeah. Well, and the interesting thing is that the Jesus uses the woman in travail metaphor for his crucifixion.
Yes.
In the upper room discourse, he says, when a woman is about to have her child, she's in sorrow for the pain, but she has joy because a new child is being brought into the world. And then he applied that, by implication to himself, but also to his disciples, where he says, I'm going, but I will see you again, and when I see you again, nobody will be able to take your joy from you. Now is your time for weeping, but I will see you again, and when I see you, nobody will be able to take your joy from you. Something like that, John 15, 16, somewhere. So, like, you're right. The birth, marriage is a metaphor of Christ in the church. But also the woman in childbearing is also a metaphor of Christ on the cross. Mm-hmm. The blood, the guts, the messiness, the loud cries, etc., etc. As a woman is in childbirth, essentially going through a crucifixion to bring about new life. Mm-hmm. And that's something that God has given women that he hasn't given to us. Mm-hmm. And so there's a way that there's lots of ways that women image Christ, image God, but particularly image Christ in ways that men cannot. Mm-hmm. And so on a philosophical level, it makes abortion even, a larger sin, because that is the ultimate in... I don't think there's any other way in which a human being can image Christ, Yeah.
So there's death without resurrection.
Correct. And so, but anyway, But
because the ultimate death of Christ on the cross, I do believe that child will rise.
Yeah. That's
sad.
Yeah, but I remember one time I was talking to friend of mine. She had just gotten. She had a C-section. It was a horrible, experience, delivery or whatever, and then 15, 16 hours in.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and so she was convinced she was going to die, and I said, well, you now have an understanding of Christ in a way that your husband will never understand, right? Because Jesus had to endure that pain so that he could bring forth a new people. And so that's a very, very powerful, the incarnation is a very, very powerful thing, because in his birth, he's actually foretelling his own crucifixion, which would give birth to a new humanity. It's also interesting is that it talks about the uterine contractions being a source of pain, and I think it was Revelation 12. So like, you have Reformed guys and Catholics, and Catholics say that Mary was sinless, of course, yada yada yada, and the Reformed guys go, oh yeah, well then how comes Mary was crying out in travail? Because a lot of Catholics say that the woman clothed with the sun and the stars and all that, they say that that's the Blessed Mother.
Okay.
I don't believe it's a Blessed Mother. I believe it's a covenant community. That's a different discussion. But so the Reformed guys go, well, why was she crying out in pain? Because pain in childbearing is from
a
result of sin and the curse. So they go, aha, we got you. She was a sinner. I think that's a silly argument, to be honest. I don't think that's a very compelling argument, but it's just funny to me. Because Jesus felt pain all through his life, and he got tired, and that's a result of the curse. That doesn't mean he sinned. It just means he participated in the curse. Right. So, you know, both sides have stupid arguments about Mary. Like the Catholics, they say, well, are you saying that the sinless Son of God was being hosted in a sinful person, in a sinful vessel?
Yeah.
And so they say Mary would have had to be sinless.
Yeah.
And then, well, the obvious question is, well, okay, so you're saying that the sinless, perfect vessel was in the womb of another sinner? Yeah. Then you'd have to say that she was sinless, and then you'd have to undo. You'd have to undo original sin in order to that. That's also a dumb argument. So both sides make dumb arguments about Mary. I just, which makes us lose. I'm a major fan of Mary. I love Mary. I love the Blessed Mother. She's like one of my favorite Bible characters, probably top 3, top 4. But there was one that my friend was a picture of, basically like a teenage girl, almost like a Palestinian girl, and like how you see those protests in Palestine because they're the settlements and all that. And you got these young teenage girls and so like the meme was presenting Mary that way because when you listen to what she's talking about God giving justice to the downtrodden and all the rest of it, and you put her in the context of the Roman occupation, then she would have had that sort of that streak to her, that little protest streak to her as a young Palestinian girl of about 16, 17 years old. Yep. So she was definitely meek for sure, I'm assuming. But, Jesus had a certain type of personality, right? And obviously he had a certain personality from all eternity, but he also inherited his humanity from his mother. Yeah. And there were times when Jesus was very meek, and there were times when he was very like, yo, what's good? And their whole family was like that. You look at John the Baptist, because Mary and John the Baptist were related. John the Baptist was Jesus' cousin.
I think but I think it was Mary's second cousin, because Mary and Elizabeth were cousins. So then it would have made John her second cousin.
And John, again, was a very fiery dude and very, you know what I mean? Like, so that whole family, like, they were on that gangster, they were gangsters. Yeah. And so it was a very cool way to look at Mary, like, yo, she wasn't playing around. And when she heard Messiah, she wasn't saying, like, oh, he's going to die for our sins. She was saying, yes, he's going to liberate us and yada, just like everybody else. So I thought that was very interesting. But I love the way that he described the scientific aspect of the incarnation. The cervix dilating, endometrium, the child emerges, afterbirth, initial respiration, like all of those, like scientific terms for the progression of life. You know what I mean? And even, you know, talking about the embryo implanting the uterine lining and all that. And it's crazy to me that, like, the body that Jesus rose from the dead in is the same body that began in the uterine lining of Mary. It's just a mind-blowing concept.
True. Yeah, that is
that we truly believe that there's a man up in some other dimension. You know, I'm saying up, but it's really an interdimensional thing. There's a literal human being in another dimension somewhere that's been around for 2,000 years. His physical body, right? We believe, you know, hypostatic union, that he was there for all eternity. But there's a physical human being that at one point was the size of a grain of sand and all that. And then you got these Protestants going crazy, acting like Mary's just some normal person. Well, which normal person do you know gave Jesus his physical body? You weirdo. Like, she's not some normal person. I mean, I don't pray to the blessed.
We don't believe in Jesus, you dummy.
Yeah, like, I don't pray to the Blessed Mother, but good Lord, I mean, it's an unbelievable, like, when you really sit and think about, like, that's why, you know, I don't really get mad at atheists or whatever. Like, if you really sit and think about what we're saying, like, it's crazy. I mean, I know it is true. People go, you can't know, blah, 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 postmodern epistemology, whatever. Perkinos is probably going to say something. But yeah, I don't care. Like, I know that this is true.
Yeah.
But I also know that, you know, I've been given supernatural, you know, privilege and to believe that.
So when people say, oh, that's convenient.
You know what's interesting to me is I was watching Joe Rogan, and Rogan was making fun of something in Christianity, whatever. But he has these guests on, and they're talking about, like, parallel universes and alternate universes and you know, yada, 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 you know. And I'm like, okay, so the idea of a virgin birth is absolutely crazy nonsense. Where's your scientific blah, blah, blah? But you're willing to entertain that there are completely different universes all over the place that we don't know about. One guy was saying, you know, it's almost a certainty that in an alternate universe somewhere, we're having this conversation somewhere. And then, like, they're willing to engage in simulation theory and things like that, none of which are testable or repeatable or anything. The Big Bang is not something that's repeatable by the very nature of the fact that it was the origin of all matter, space, and time. So all these, but then you say something like, oh, that's so ridiculous, that's stupid, oh, you stupid Christians. It's like, come on, bro. Like, be consistent.
Yeah.
Be consistent with your skepticism. Say, oh, that hologram, that simulate, oh, that's garbage, simulation theory. But then you got, like, these top physicists going, no, that's a very big possibility.
Well, that thought process doesn't require anything of you.
Which, if we were in a simulation, there'd be no way for you to prove that. So, like, it's just, it's like, it's hilarious to me, like, you know, like, I understand on the one hand it's a very fantastical thing, but some of the stuff y'all be coming up with, man, good night. It's just like, it's like, oh yeah, I was talking to somebody and I was like, oh, we all know the universe had a beginning, and the guy goes, well, no, there's theories that, you know, there's a multiverse theory and yada yada yada. I'm like, yeah, but what's the majority report right now in the Big Bang? Does the universe have an age or not? He goes, yes. But there could be, because what he was trying to do was avoid the uncaused first cause issue. You know, as Rogan was talking about it on, you know, his show, like what was happening before the Big Bang, and the guy.
I'm sure most people know what he's talking about. It's where there's something at the beginning that was not caused, that was the beginning of everything. Yeah, so we say that's God.
Well, the thing is that it's a logical necessity if the universe has a birthday. And the universe, the current science right now tells us the universe does have a birthday. So it's not something where you can say, oh, science is going to explain that later. No. Like, if you see a rainbow, you can say, science will explain why we see different colors. But science cannot tell us how irrational, illogical things happen. Because science, the scientific method is based on logic. It's subservient to logic. So what we're talking about is a logical issue, not an issue where we say, oh, we can't understand that.
Right.
That's a difference. Like, if you're talking about a rainbow or something, sure. Ancient people couldn't understand, the scientific machinations of what makes a rainbow. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about logic here. Mm-hmm. Like, nothing cannot produce everything. That's logic. That's not something science is going to be able to help us with.
Right.
So, it's like, he goes, yeah, the majority reports that the universe had a birthday. I said, okay, if the universe had a birthday, then it had to have a cause. Now, we're saying there's an uncreated being that is outside of time, space, and matter. Mm-hmm. So that you have nothing. And he knew he had nothing, so his response, instead of just saying, okay, his response is, well, there could be multiverses and blah, 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 which is completely, it's woo-woo, it's hooey. But this is so, like, on the one hand, I'm like, okay, what's crazier to believe? That nothing generated everything? Or is it crazier to believe that God, who could speak things into existence, said, oh, I'm just going to join the human race? Like, B sounds a lot simpler to me than A. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that means B is true and A is false. I'm just saying, if we want to pride ourselves on being skeptics and things of that nature, then let's apply the skepticism across the board, shall we? Mm-hmm. Instead of like, and it's unfortunate because every time somebody comes with that sort of posture, mm-hmm. when they get questioned about the grounding foundations of their worldview, they get very hostile because nobody wants to be made to look very stupid, mm-hmm. In front of a bunch of people. You were out here mocking somebody, and then you believe something even more fantastical mm-hmm. than the people you were mocking. So then they get all defensive and do the ad hominem stuff and all the rest of it. So it was just very, very interesting, in the year 2020, like, you're talking about the cervix and the contractions and the uterine wall and all this stuff, and he's combining it. The Word became in flesh. What's interesting is the scripture says the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Yeah. And he says the Word became flesh and blood through the unnatural conception, which is very interesting to me because blood is a very big part of the Christ story mm-hmm. in the New Testament. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the song. Obviously,
it was beautiful. Hey, at the beginning was when she was singing. It reminded me of Ave Maria when they would sing that. But I guess she's just saying,
Yeah, I don't think she's saying Ave. I could see how you'd say Ave Maria. Yeah.
In my head, that's what it became, and then...
Yeah. And then, of course, you've got Herod who's slaughtering all these kids.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so when I heard that story for the first time, I was a child, and so I remember thinking, oh, so my brother wouldn't be here, because I had a sister and a brother. So I'm like, so my sister would have made it, my brother wouldn't be here. And I'm like, I guess that would be pretty sad for my mom. I wouldn't have really known about it because I was so young myself. But then when I became a mom, I only had a daughter. So I remember when I read the story again, and I had my daughter, I'm like, whew, I would have dodged that bullet because she was a girl. So now I have 4 if you count the one here too, 4 sons, but two of them I'm birthing myself, and 2 of them came from Vin previously. So there's
I had nothing to do with it.
He had nothing to do with that one either. Convenient for me. But like, when you have them as babies and you watch them grow, like from I'm like thinking of Orion. He's like 15 months. I don't even know. I don't really count much. He's the one. So I'm like, I can't even imagine if someone just came through and just put. So when I was listening to this song, now I'm hearing the story again, but I have a son and I have one in my womb, and I was just like horrified at the thought that somebody would come through and just kill him. And then when it says like, basically it talks about like the weeping was so loud from that place that the women refused to be comforted because their children were dead. Yeah. And like I remember reading that verse previously, And I'm like, I didn't really understand they refused to be comforted. Now it makes so much sense. Like, if your baby just got killed like that, like, I can see, like, you don't want any comforts. Like, just let me die. Like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, like, everybody was experiencing it because they just came through and just massacred all of them under 2 years of age.
Yeah, like, people don't realize, like, the blessing it is to live in the age that we do, because the things that we recoil at and call atrocious or whatever are just par for the course in throughout the majority of human history. And you know, it's a terrible thing, but I mean, it's human nature. And I just think about, like, I wonder if Jesus heard that story when he was a kid. Because I could imagine, like, if I was in Joseph's position, I would never tell that story to him. Because it would be his fault, technically. See what I'm saying? So I would never tell him that story. So, I mean, so it's just all these things where I, like, you know,
so
you
interesting, because you're right. But I feel like I would have told the story and I would have been like God protected you and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, like...
yeah, he protected you, but screw all those other babies.
Oh my gosh. You and I are so different in stuff like that.
What do you mean?
Like, sometimes, like, I'm just looking at, like, the hope side of it, and I'm not looking at how tragic the other side is. And then, like, you remind me, and I'm like...
Well, it just shows you what type of life we've both led. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, uh-huh.
So, yeah.
Prosperity.
Yeah, exactly. It's like...
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I would have never told him that. At all. But...
Well...
And he didn't really spend a lot of time in Bethlehem. So I don't even know if in his humanity he even knew that happened. Because he, you know, when they came back from Egypt, they lived in Nazareth and all this stuff. You know what I mean? So... I don't see, like, what would be the point of telling him that. You know what I mean?
I hear what you're saying. Yikes.
So yeah, man, this is a really good song. Really good song.
They did such a good job. Like, I don't want to listen to, like, metal like that at Christmas time. You did last Christmas. You put on some of that kind of stuff. Yeah. I'm like, no, I want the classics.
It wasn't like this, though. This is not like a Christmas. It's describing the Christmas event, but in a very doom metal sort of way.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying if you like, if doom metal around the holidays was something I was good with, which I'm not, then I would absolutely play this song around the holidays. But I like the classics.
What do you give it?
Oh, boy. I really don't have it. The only thing that I would say was lyrically, I thought it was a little bland. The way that it wasn't like, there wasn't like rhyming spots and the words weren't like really deep. And so, I guess I'll give it a 9. 9.2.
That is a 9.2 for me as well. It's like a very good song. Very good song.
It was really
sorry
good.
It went a little long in the review, but I mean, what can you do?
Right.
We had to give the thing justice. Good song. There you go. Multiverses and incarnations and theology. Oh my! Vin out.
Sori out.
Gone. Where else can you find such a channel, dear
And you
listener?
found out that Vin was a part of my pregnancy, so that's cool.
Correct. You have never been pregnant.